Welcome back everyone. So in the last video we solved debounce, and in this video we are going to solve execute asynchronous function in parallel. So let's dive in. Okay, so we are given an array of asynchronous functions. We have to return a new promise. Each function in the array accepts no argument and returns a promise. All the promises should be executed in parallel. Now promise resolves. When all the promises returned from the functions were resolved successfully in parallel, the result value of promise should be an array of all the resolved values of promises in the same order as they were in the functions. The promise should resolve when all the synchronous functions in the array have completed execution in parallel. Now, when any of the promises returned from functions were rejected, promise should also reject with the reason of the first rejection. Now we have to solve this without using the inbuilt Promise.all functions, and all these functions are the functions that will return a new promise. So let's directly jump to the solution. So what we have to do is we have to return a new promise. So okay, let's first use the Promise.all functions. Okay, we know that we don't have to use that Promise.all as per the question, but let's first use that, and then later we will use the different versions to solve the Promise.all. So we'll have to return a new promise, that is Promise.all, and we have to pass these functions. But the Promise.all accept promises. So what we'll do is we'll call all these promises dot map, that is function, and we'll call this function, and then we'll return all these promises to the Promise.all. Okay, so all the test case has been rejected because we forgot to call these function. Okay, so all the test case has been passed, and now we'll see whether this can pass all the test case or not. Okay, so our solution got accepted, and now we'll try the different approach without using Promise.all. So what we have to do is we have to return a new promise, and this promise accepts a function that takes resolve or reject as a function. Now what we have to do is we have to run all those promises in parallel, and if all the promises are resolved, then we'll resolve with the result of those promises in order. Okay, but if any of the promises is rejected, then we have to reject this promise with that rejection. Okay, so to run all those promises in the parallel, we have to store those promises somewhere, the result of those promises. So let's say constant results is empty array. Now for all the functions dot for each function with index, so we enclose the value of I. Okay, so this is a closure. So what we'll do is we'll call that function, and then we'll get a result. Then we'll store this result in the results at index I and the result. Also we'll make this array the same length as that of functions. So array, so we'll have to create new array and array of length functions dot length. Okay, and at the index I will store the result of this promise. Now if this promise fails catch with an error, then simply we'll reject with this error. Okay, that's okay, but there is a problem. Where should we resolve? Because we don't know how many promises are resolved, but we know that if any of the promises is failed, we simply reject. But where should we resolve? Because we don't know how many promises are resolved yet. Okay, so for that we can create a variable called resolve count. Okay, and whenever a promise is resolved, that is here. Okay, whenever a promise is resolved, we'll increment this, and finally here only we'll check if the resolve count is equals to functions dot length, then we'll resolve with results. Let's see the result of this. Okay, so function with an index, we'll call this function. Then if there is a result, we'll increment the result count plus plus. Result is stored in the results, and if the result count is equals to functions dot length, functions dot length, then we will resolve with results. Okay, this is a constant. So all the test case has been passed. Now I'll try to submit this, and our solution got accepted. Okay, so let me explain you once again. So what we did is we returned a new promise, and this promise will resolve when all the promises are resolved. So how do we make sure that all promises are resolved? So we will increment this value whenever any promises is resolved, and we'll check if the resolved count is equal to functions.length, then we'll resolve. And if any of the promises is rejected, then we'll reject with the error message. Okay. So all of these are executed in parallel, because when this for loop, this for each is executed, we are using function call and then. So we are not waiting for this function to complete. We are using then and catch blocks. Okay. So these all are running in parallel. And if anyone is rejected, we simply reject. And if it is resolved, we'll set the value result. And if the result count is equal to function.length, we will resolve. So the last promise resolve will resolve with the results array. Okay.